Hello and welcome to SG Squared. Pastor Steve Gladen pulls from over 25 years of small group ministry experience to encourage and equip listeners like you to lead small group ministry. So let's listen and learn together.
Welcome to SG Squared. Steve Gladen on small groups. Derek here with the man of the hour, Steve Gladen. How are you, my friend?
Hey, it's doing really, really good. You know, spring is in the air. I mean, actually, spring has been in the air in Southern California probably since January 1. But lest we digress and talk about anybody else in the country that may be getting a cold wave or a wet wave or a storm wave, whatever's happening out there. But we're doing good. We're enjoying life. I should put it that way.
So what is the temperature right now in good old sunny SoCal there in Orange County?
You know, let's not boast about things we shouldn't boast about. So it's I'll be in short sleeves. Let's put it that way.
Must be nice. Yeah, up here in the Great Pacific Northwest, little different story. Now, I would imagine the same is true of my friends in the Midwest that are watching and listening. We're probably not all out in T-shirts, but hey, I'm just glad that winter is fading away and summer is approaching. Those are the days we live for in the Great Pacific Northwest.
Well, you know, I did talk to a pastor. It's all relative because I was talking to a pastor and he was in a T-shirt. And I go, dude, because he's up in the upper north part, as we would say in the team up north area. And he was in a short sleeve. I go, dude, what's the temperature? He goes, it's 41 and sunny. I was like, oh, so that's relative. It's all relative.
It is. One other quick thought. I remember when I lived in Alaska all those years ago, I lived in Fairbanks, which is what they call real Alaska. Like we're talking, this ain't Anchorage, Seattle mini light. This is real Alaska where you get 40 below winters. And so after having experienced several 40 below temperatures sweep through the area, when the temperature went up to 0, I would literally go out in a T-shirt to get the mail and put the garbage out because it felt so warm versus minus 40. So it is all relative.
There we go. From the man.
So our listeners probably are wondering, they've seen the title of this episode, which is The Real Question You Should Be Asking. So Steve, what's the gist of this episode?
Yeah, I mean, there's as small group point people, there are so many questions that you can be asking. I mean, matter of fact, I wrote a whole book on 20 questions as a small group point person you should be asking. And what can happen so often is the tyranny of the urgent sometimes can weigh us into questions that aren't really the real question we should be asking. Sometimes it's the staff or the senior leader that wants to go in a particular direction. And then just the realities. I mean, even when I was on staff at Saddleback or other churches, you may be called the small group pastor, or you may be called the discipleship pastor, whatever it is, but you had a number of things that just came into your regular daytime job that would not derail you, but that would, kind of get you doing all church projects, or there was a wedding or a funeral that came up, or different pieces like that. So there's all kinds of good questions that are there. But we tend to miss the most important question that we've got to drill into.
And before we get to the main question, what do we all agree on from this process that you're kind of describing here?
Yeah. And I would say there's a lot of things that we can agree on. I think every one of us would say that, that are what we are called to do when there's temple courts and house to house. Temple courts is really driving relevant teaching. It's driving for the culture. It's driving, what's the vision of the church? Where is it going? What are they trying to do with that? in the house to house world, we're trying to help people, go on that spiritual journey. We're trying to help them fill that spiritual void that's out there. But regardless, it all does start with connection. We call it the second step out of the weekend. We want them to get with some type of grouping of people so that they can, when they come to the weekend, they have something else that's giving them that stickiness that's out there. And so we want to make sure that, that people, have somewhere to go to after that. Now it's super important that we understand that connection is very, very important. And I think no matter what strategy you go with, it's going to be important for you to see that connection is probably something we would all agree on where we need to go.
Absolutely. So is the connection strategy bad or the wrong angle to take based on what you just said there?
Yeah. Where I would go with and where I would say is that, it's got to be the first part. Matter of fact, when you look across the United States, there are 7 basic small group models that are out there. All of them have different strengths, different weaknesses, but they all get kicked into that first gear of what's the connection process, which is a question like we're always asking is, how are we connecting people? How are we retaining people with that? But when I look through the 7 strategies, as I jotted them down real quick, because I'm sure some people are going to be asking, and one of the things we're working on in the small group network is getting a course on each one of these strategies so that you can see, what are the pros and the cons and which one fits better in my culture. But they all have some form of connection. There's the cell model that is out there that came from Paul Young Cho, got kind of readapted by Dale Galloway, actually from the Pacific Northwest when in his church, and it's kind of eked out in different centrics circles and stuff like that. Joel Comiskey's wrote a ton on that, and it's a good model if it fits in your church. There's the free market approach to that, came out of, I would say, if you read Pure Purpose-Driven Church from Rick Warren in the early 90s, it echoed that, but also from Ted Haggard from Colorado Springs in Colorado, wrote a book, Fly Fishing and Dog Walking or something like that. As a book like that talked about free market. Then there's the host model from Saddleback Church, which, if you've been on this channel, you've heard that in nauseum from me. There's the meta model that Bill Donahue worked through with Carl George, a lot from Willow Creek. The Willow Creek Association started in Willow Creek, but I think Carl George kind of was the father of all that. Then you have the missional approach, and Todd from I'm spacing the church name really quick right now, but he's there on the missional model approach. It's right there. You have the modified meta movement that Bill Willits has kind of worked on. You have, a seasonal approach that's out there, which Heather Zippel from National Community Church in the DC area has kind of pioneered with that, the semester groups and stuff like that. All that to say, too much detail on that, but all that to say that not only do we agree on it and it's necessary, but I'm not sure it's the driving question that we should be asking. It's a good question, but is it the right question that we should be asking or drilling into? So although there's all these different starting points, they all have connections, they all have different ones, but it's the first part of the strategy that kind of kicks off our house to house movement.
So what would the second half of the strategy be?
Yeah, good question. Because when you got the first half, is kind of working on the connection process, there is a second half of the strategy, but there will be a driving question that will drive both of them and kind of everything we're talking about. But that second half of the strategy really is going to be the arm of spiritual formation or discipleship or making disciples or, however your church terms it, it'll take a process out of there. Now, again, I am a groups person. And I just want to backtrack on the connection side just a little bit. I'm a groups person, but I would say that the weekend is hypercritical, because if you don't have people uh, to connect and drive your process, then nothing else is going to happen. And what you can see, or it's not going to happen in a large scale. If Peter wouldn't have preached a sermon and 3,000 people got saved, Acts 2:42-47 might not have been as applicable for the where the church was going. But in all that, there is a discipleship element that flows underneath all of that. So if I had to answer your question, I would say there's the connection process, but there's the discipleship process that's going to happen from that. And there's a couple parts with that, but we'll see where we go. And with that, if nothing else, I'll bring it up on, when we get down it's a little further in the show.
So when we're talking about discipleship, is this something the small group point person needs to worry about?
No, yeah. I mean, it is important, because when you talk about the small group point person, you've really got to ask how the church is structured, because what you want to be able to do is say, depending on the model, and I just listed 7 of them really quick for you that are out there. But depending on the model will depend a lot on what you're going to do. So in my context, when I was at Saddleback with Rick Warren, it was clear that he had a 2-prong approach to discipleship. One part of it was the small group point person's responsibility. But we also worked hand in hand with a team of people that worked on cognitive resources and classes that the church was developing to help you as an individual start to grow and learn the cognitive disciplines of what's it mean to fast, what's it mean to have a quiet time, how do you read your Bible, how do you do a spiritual, a walking prayer time or prayer, or different spiritual disciplines. There was a team that worked out the content with that. But it was the small group person's, reality to say, this is what discipleship is, and this is what we got to do, which kind of drives that question. So it is, when you ask the question, does the point person have to worry about that? It does depend on the structure. But what I would say is that you have to understand that the driving question needs to be, what are you trying to produce? What is that? And it should echo your whole discipleship strategy. So often we get hung up into the whole part of, in our role of just, one particular thing, whether it's connection, or maybe it's all discipleship, or maybe you're doing the serving groups, or maybe you have, the missions arm of your church, or maybe it's the worship arm of your church. Whatever it is, so often what happens is there's no one sitting in the control tower trying to figure out what is the real question we should be asking and how is everybody driving towards it.
Very interesting. So I guess my next goes to then what's the responsibility of the small group point person in all this?
Yeah. And it's something that, I think a lot of what I've experienced in the church is a lot of times, a lot of the point people abdicate the real question that needs to be asked. And that is, what's your discipleship strategy? Because what happens is either because of position, where it's at in the food chain of your church or something like that, oftentimes that we don't feel like we have the clout or the wherewithal to ask the question. But I think what we got to say is your responsibility is if you're in charge of the house to house movement, you've got to know what you're trying to produce in a disciple, because if you don't, your training can't line up towards that. You won't know how to get your coaching structure doing it. You won't know how to pick your curriculum. You won't know how to build the tools that you need to do in explaining your training, what is a disciple or what's success for a small group leader. And so for you as a small group point person, you've got to carry that mantle of saying, if there is nobody else in the church that's doing it, how can you be the voice that does that? And I think oftentimes we think that connection equals people growing in Christ and just being discipled. But what can happen so often is there's not a pathway or a strategy, whether you're doing a free market approach, whether you're doing a sell model, whether you're doing, whatever you're going to do, even with us in the host model. We start with a very low bar, but we've got to drive them to maturity and understanding what they're trying to do in the kingdom world with discipleship. And many times what the small group point person's got to do is figure out who's handling the cognitive approach of discipleship and who's handling the ability for discipleship to be understood. Because it's not just cognitive, it is actually doing the things that Christ asked us to do. When you look at Acts 2:42 through 47, there's a lot of things that are cognitive in our part, meditating on the disciples' teaching, applying it and working through it and asking the tough questions. But it's also about doing it and making sure that it actually people see Christians in action. And so a roundabout way is that saying there's lots of good questions that are out there. There's lots of good things that the small group point person can do, but your compass has got to be centered due north on what is your discipleship process? What is it that you're trying to produce? Because till you know what you're trying to produce, and I'm talking about going beyond cute sayings of what you're trying to do. Ours was, balance the Great Commission and the Great Commandment in the heart of every person in every group. And that's a cute phrase and that's a great slogan. But if you don't have it drilled out from there, what are the tools? What are the curriculum? What are the trainings? What are you coaching them on? What are the different strategies? So regardless of whatever model you're doing in your small group movement for your church, that's irregardless to the main question of saying, who is holding the discipleship piece? And so that's what I would encourage you in this show. There's lots of good questions, and I get caught up by the same questions all the time. But if you don't know what your compass is set for due north, then you're going to miss and your wheels are going to spin and you're not going to get much traction for what you're trying to do in your church.
This reminds me of it was the first lobby gathering that I ever came to as a young, aspiring small group point person. And of course, I was there to learn as much as I could. And I remember I came up to you and asked you a couple questions, and you just took it all back to what you just said. You said, what kind of disciple are you trying to produce? And I was like, oh, shoot. I got to go way back. There's a lot more work to be done here.
We'll go with oh, shoot. I remember you saying something different, but that's okay. I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding.
The point is, it wasn't, there was no quick fix, magical pill to take, and the latest strategies. Like you're saying, all these different 7 strategies and models that we see. It really goes back to, man, what kind of disciple do you want to build throughout their time in your church and in your small group ministry, right?
Yeah, you just put a nice little exclamation point to the point on the strategies, because so often churches run from model to model to model. Mm-hmm. And it's not so much the model's important because it goes off the playbook of your church. And so even with the transition from Rick to Andy, Andy's model was different than Rick's. on the execution of, the connecting strategy part. Not much, but enough that, it had to happen in a different way as far as he was concerned in that aspect. But still, it boils down to that same question of, what are you trying to produce? And if you don't know what you're trying to produce, then you can't figure out throughout the organization who's running point on it. Now, the whole point of this show is to say, if you're the small group point person, if you're listening to this show, I would encourage you, if it's not you, find out who it is so that you can help them, through what you're doing in your group's ministry. If it is you, I would encourage you, make sure you get clarity on it so that you can help your church achieve what they're trying to do. Because your pastor generally brings the vision, you bring the implementation, and that's going to be an important piece for you.
Well said. Well, we hope that this episode encouraged everybody listening or watching. We hope it equips you to build better, healthier small groups. And again, we just want to thank you for tuning in and sharing part of your day with us. Steve, any other parting words?
No, just appreciate each one of you. And if you have any questions, you can DM any of us and we'll help you out at the Small Group Network. If you're not an All Access member, I'd encourage you to jump into that because it's one of the best ways to get all the great materials we have as far as curriculum and resources and training and cohorts and conferences and all the C words that are out there to help you out.
And Steve, remind me, what's the link for that all access cohort?
Yeah, thanks, man. It's smallgroupnetwork.com. And you just go in there and you'll see right from the homepage right away, the plans that we offer. But all access gets you all access to everything. Hey, let me make just a quick little plug too for those of you that listened all the way to the end. We're actually getting ready in the fall, depending on when you're listening to this. In October of 2026, we're launching the Small Group Network coaching platform. And again, that'll be free for everyone that's in all access, but it's a great opportunity for you to get weekly coaching in your small group ministry. So something for you to jump onto and be a part of.
And click the link in the show notes below to get that link to all access as well. Thank you everybody for watching. And until next time, we'll see you later.
See you later on.
Thank you for listening. And don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to go deeper and get more resources or join the Small Group Network, just head over to smallgroupnetwork.com. We'll see you next time.